Hello everyone, in today's tutorial I'm going to show you how I made this awesome 3D willow cake. This cake was inspired by a childhood memory. I would spend what seemed like hours under a willow tree, and that memory always stayed with me. So this is the inspiration for this cake. Uh, this is a two-part video, and the other video I cover making the branches and the chocolate mushrooms and the edible moss, so don't forget to go and check that out. I will try to link it below, but if not, it's going to be on my channel. As always, please don't forget to subscribe if this is the first time that you're watching one of my videos. I will be bringing more of these kind of videos of 3D cakes in the near future. And thank you. Don't forget to also give me a like and share my content. Okay, we're gonna get right into it. I'm gonna start with the metal rod that is 12 inches long. I've bent it at a 45-degree angle. I'm gonna be using contact paper. This is regularly used for our drawers, but I always use it for my boards. It's clear contact paper. I'm also using two Boba straws, which are gonna keep the cake from touching the metal rod. And I'm gonna be using as well 4-inch cakes. I stacked up three pieces of 4-inch cake, and then the two more on top, but I cut them to a smaller size. And I'm also using ganache, which is gonna help me have a sturdy structure. Happy with the size of the cake, I moved on to carving, and here I'm not using a specific method of carving. I'm just making holes and indents and certain places. If you see trees, they're not perfect, they're not perfectly round. They have a lot of lumps and a lot of holes, and that's what I was trying to mimic. So there's really no wrong or right way of doing this. Once I carved the cake to my liking, I used the scraps from the carving itself and the tops of the 4-inch cakes to make a K-pop mixture, and I'm using them to make the roots of the tree. After this, I ganache my cake entirely. I gave it a couple of layers and I set it in the refrigerator overnight to set, just so it will make it easier for me to go to the next step, making sure it was nice and hard. To the next part of the cake, which is the top layer where the branches are gonna go. I'm using 16 gauge wire, which I'm looping at one end, and then making it into like a little oval, so it takes the shape of branches. I'm also using foil tape, which I'm using to connect these 16 gauge wires to the main metal rod. I worked my way up until I was happy with the placement and the amount of branches that I wanted to add to the cake. I decided to use Rice Krispie treats to continue to build the shape of the tree. I had a very hard time sticking the Rice Krispie treats to the wires, and after making this cake I realized that I could have just used the same modeling chocolate that I was going to use to cover the cake in the first place, just by adding a big piece on top and then molding it to the rest of the cake. I would have saved myself a lot of trouble, but that's how you learn. Finally, after struggling for about 20 minutes to get this Rice Krispie treat to stick to my wire, I finally was able to make it stick for a little bit, enough for me to ganache it. And I wasn't super happy with the shape, but it was manageable and I was just gonna make it work. I set it in the refrigerator for a couple of hours before I moved on to covering the cake. Okay, now with the help of foil tape, I'm going to be building up the branches, making them look thicker. If I was to just put the modeling chocolate on top of the wire, I will have a lot of trouble sticking the modeling chocolate to the wire. So the purpose of the foil tape is to make it a little bit easier on you to add either fondant or whatever you're using to cover your cake, uh, to make it much easier on you to be able to stick it on. Uh, if you're not able to find foil tape, I've also used the method of just regular foil, just crunching it up and attaching it to the wire, or also I've tried scotch tape. That method also works. Okay, now using the white modeling chocolate, I'm gonna start building up the branches. Right now I'm not worrying about too much about texture. I'm just worrying about sticking, making sure that this modeling chocolate sticks to the wire itself or to the foil tape. One thing that you don't see me doing here is I added ganache to the wire, and it made it, you could see right there that it made it a little bit brown, but this is what helped the modeling chocolate stay. Now I'm covering the rest of the cake with modeling chocolate. Modeling chocolate is really hard to uh, mm, how should I say it? It's hard to make a big sheet of modeling chocolate. It's not the same as fondant where you could spread it out very thin. Uh, with modeling chocolate, you literally have to do like a section at a time. Here I'm working to, after placing the modeling chocolate, um, just molding it into the cake. And since this is a tree, it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be smooth. Trees have uh, bumps and lumps and different textures, so I was okay with it being a little bit lumpy. Now I'm gonna start to add texture to the tree. I'm literally using a skewer and this tool that I'm not sure what it's called. I guess it's a texturizing tool, and a tiny little balling tool. Making lines all over the cake, uh, going up and down and sideways, and making little like specks of holes, and then going over them with that black tool that I'm using. And here I'm gonna start to paint my cake. I'm using vodka with a little bit of green, Kelly green food dye. It's Wilton food dye, and a little bit of brown. And I'm gonna be layering this. So this is gonna be my first coat. I didn't want my cake to look like absolutely brown. I wanted to have a little bit of like a greenish tint to it. I'm making certain parts of the cake more green than the others. This is just to give it a little bit of contrast. Um, I'm also planning to put where I have the lighter green shades. This is where I'm going to be placing the edible moss as well. Giving my cake a final coat of brown, I colored just a couple parts darker than the others by using vodka to dilute it. I'm also, this is 3 ways of making edible moss: with graham cracker crumbs, with the bread method, and with the coconut shavings, which I use for the leaves of the cake. I'm gonna cover my cake board with ganache, and this is gonna act as a glue for me to be able to stick all the stuff that I want to stick onto the board. I'm also using these chocolate frosted flakes. I crushed them and I'm adding them to look like the leaves, like the fallen leaves of the tree or the dirt. And I'm also going to be adding the little mushrooms that I made in the previous video. The mushrooms and the moss, the cake moss, are in a separate video. I will try to link it down below. But if not, it's going to be in my channel. These are make ahead of time things that you can make ahead of time before you even start doing the cake. I made a couple of indents into the cake to add these little mushrooms that I also made. These are made out of a mixture of half fondant and half modeling chocolate. They set fast. I was having a hard time sticking them to the cake. I had to hold them for a while, and I used the same ganache that I'm using for the board. I also used it for that, holding it until it's set. It continued to move a section at a time with the board, adding the different types of moss that I made wherever I felt I needed, and the chocolate mushrooms. To attach each individual strand of leaves that I made, I used a very thin florist wire. I wrapped the leftover string of each wire individually, looped it into the wire, and then very carefully tried to attach it to each branch. I did have trouble with some of my branches breaking on the parts where I was trying to stick the wire in, and I fixed that by just covering it with ganache, going over the top of it with ganache and hiding the seams, and adding the some of the edible moss to also hide the ganache. This was literally the hardest part of the cake, is making these little strings of leaves and attaching them. It was the most time consuming and the hardest part of the cake, I have to say. And even after making tons of them, I felt like it needed a bunch more, but I was literally done with this. I did not want to do any more of these strands. Now I'm gonna place my fairy in the middle of the cake. I'm sorry I wasn't able to bring a tutorial on the how I made the fairy. I did film it, but I never noticed when I was filming, when I was making the fairy, that my hand was blocking the view of how I was making it the entire length of the video. I was not able to get any good clips out of it. All you could see was my hand in front. So I can bring a video of the fairy. Um, I hope that you guys stayed to this point of the video. I hope you guys enjoyed it and you guys took something out of this tutorial. Please don't forget to subscribe, to like, to share my content. If you are new to my channel, please subscribe. Comment. I would love to answer any questions that you guys have. I'll be delighted to answer any questions. Thank you.